think, yeah, I think we're starting. Okay, cool. All right, guys, welcome back. We got one of our favorite guests back, Mr. Nathaniel Gillis. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
Of course, yeah, it's always a pleasure. So I just did a video recently. You and I were talking earlier, and we were discussing the Kozyrev mirror. Right now, I butchered the story completely. The way you told it to me was a lot better. So I'm just gonna have you summarize that a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what actually happened with the scientists, and then we're gonna get into some more details. Okay.
So yeah, Nikolai Kozyrev was a Russian cosmist, I think is what they call him, but he was an experimenter and a scientist. So his theory was that that matter and time were interwoven, and that if you want to kind of bend time, you have to bend matter with it. Pretty sure I murdered that cosmist. He might have been a cosmicist. I always get those two words mixed up because they're exactly alike. But so yeah, that was his theory. And so he hypothesized that if one could create a mirror, like sheet metal, and wrapped it into itself, like a cinnamon roll, if you will, and placed glass in the middle, that you could interface with time that has been bent. And so it was almost like a portal. And so it all goes back to scrying, right?
Yeah.
And we'll get to that here in a second too. But anyways, Nikolai Kozyrev created this mirror and he was running experiments with it. But later on in the 1990s, there were two researchers in Russia that were in charge of a top secret facility in Siberia. It's about 50 miles away from Alaska. So they had this top secret facility, and their job was to create the Kozyrev mirror. And so it was all on lockdown at that time. And so here they are, they're at this facility, they have this particular room, and they have the mirror in the middle. So they were running different experiments, and the manifestations included symbols or sigils that would manifest on the mirror. And the individuals that they'd say what they're seeing, and sometimes they'd have a notebook and they'd write, try to draw the symbols. Like one instance, they had a homunculi entity. It's almost like Lamb, almost identical to Lamb of the Crowley lore, who was actually peeking through the window, if you will, at them. And at one point, there was an unspeakable terror that almost materialized in the room, scared them to death. And so one of them suggested, you know what, why don't we go get a crucifix? We're going to place it outside of the room itself. And so they did. And for a period of time, the fear dissipated. But once again, it returned, and it returned even stronger. So one of the researchers felt compelled to go back home and get a symbol that was employed by his favorite philosopher. It was the emblem of peace. That's what they would call it. It was a circle with three other circles in the middle of it. So as it was, he did that. He brought in that symbol, placed it in front of the mirror, and the fear became even stronger, to his surprise. And so at the end of the day, they wrapped up their experiments, and they're leaving the facility when they're confronted by one of the security guards who said, I don't know what you're doing in there, but for the last 2 hours, there has been a silver metallic object hovering over the facility.
Wow.
So that researcher goes home and he didn't get any sleep. He keeps racking his brain. What was this? Why is it that scrying, essentially, is what it would be? Scrying somehow materialized a craft, not just an entity, but what we would consider to be a UFO, or now they call it a UAP. What's going on here? And even more so, why did the terror increase instead of diminish? It was almost like this was, intended by something or someone else. So he goes home and he starts to think, was that, I was told that was the emblem of peace, but what really was it? Where did it come from? So that's when he did research, and that's when he found out that that emblem of peace was actually a sigil used in Haiti in voodoo ritual magic.
In Haiti, you said, right?
Yes. And
Oh,
so
wow.
this is why when I do lectures and shows, it's like I'm almost out of breath. I beat a dead horse. I'm verbose on this point because once again, my friends, this goes to prove that not only was it not an emblem, it was a sigil. It wasn't an emblem of peace. It was a sigil belonging to something and someone on the other side of that mirror. In my lecture, at least my theory, still stands that the conjurers are not conjurers. They are being conjured. They're being summoned to conjure, if you will. And in a very true way, it's almost like people will say, oh, well, I'm opening the door. Yes, but they're being given the key
Right. Right.
to
The
open
door's
the door.
closed and the key is being slid underneath.
There we go, brother. In this danger of, again, the illusion of control that these practitioners have. And I mean, that's where we are. We'll get to that in a second, but that's where we are in the field where people are actively, conjuring. And it's like, okay, yeah, but do you have the historical evidence to suggest you're in control? And they'll admit, no, I don't. And then some of them will deny it and they'll be like, okay, whatever, we're just going to do what we're going to do. That's where I'm at right now in my research, where, yeah, people are being conjured. In that relationship, there is this symbiotic connection between the summoner and those who are being conjured.
Right. Right. Now, regarding the beings that are peeking on this other side, right?
Yeah.
When let's say the mirror is being created initially, and they have these thoughts to create the mirror in the first place, which by the way makes sense, right? Space and time are interrelated.
It's
You curb
fascinating, really.
space, you're going to curb
Yeah.
time, right? Kind of like a wormhole. What do you think their intention is? Why is there that door to begin with, and why are they reaching out?
So the lead researcher in that case study came to a startling conclusion. His conclusion was like, by the way, he left it all.
Right.
He said, I'm out, I'm
Makes sense. I
out.
would too. 100%.
Chucked up the deuces and said, I don't know. First of all, right, he was honest enough, intellectually honest enough to be like, okay, not only am I not in control of this experiment, it's possible that I'm the experiment to them.
All right.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That somebody, again, the importance of this particular data set cannot be overstated because it wasn't just that he got outplayed. It was the fact that even his trust in emblems and icons, it proved to be merely a logo employed by something out there in the ether. And the entire situation had been manipulated. Oh my goodness, my friend. I mean, now you've got to think back and like he did to where, okay, who implanted the thought that I acted upon, right? Who convinced that philosopher 30, 40, 50 years ago that this is an emblem of peace? Is it possible? I don't know. Just throwing this out there. Again, this is what they were thinking about at that particular time. Is it possible that the phenomenon orchestrated these entire events, downloaded that emblem piece into the mind of the philosopher just to further in the future employ that in the mind, plant it in the mind of the experimenter? Right? I'm going to literally design and orchestrate life events because there's going to come a day. This philosopher has no intention of scrying. He has no idea what it is, doesn't even want to do it. But there will be a day in Siberia when
Yeah.
someone will open that portal, and I want to be there.
Right. The cold environment definitely helped with that as well, right?
It did. It's very interesting. But the lead researcher kind of just left it all. It's like, okay, I don't want anything to do with this. And they asked him why. And he made a very public statement. He said, because not only was I not in control, but there are three levels to knowledge: the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. It's possible that it wasn't that I encountered the unknown. It was that I encountered the unknowable. In interfacing with that, kind of put him in the position of realizing, okay, I'm not in control of virtually anything. And whatever that is on the other side of the window or the mirror it was almost tethering its presence to the sigil itself, and then saying, listen, I need you to strengthen my incarnation in that dimension. Bring that, right, to the portal. And so between between this side and that side, there was a portal created. Yeah, and this particular researcher is fascinating because in his statement, before he left it all, he said, look, he goes, my biggest fear is that knowing it's a portal, that the military industrial complex in his own country and in other countries in the world, that the military industrial complex would try to weaponize that technology. And in their weaponization of that technology, actually amplify the portal itself. And this is where we're at, right? This is, again, the danger of being ignorant of history, or at least ignoring history itself. The very first incarnation of this intelligence, at least from my research, has been necromancy, has been the esoteric value. And built into that esotericism was the concept of reincarnating or transmigrating, of literally merging their memory with our matter and us calling it technology. And so somewhere within that technological dynamic, there is a Trojan horse of, sure, I'm going to give you this technological advancement, but I'm putting myself into it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll think it's a weapon, it's a portal. You're not
Then you'll put that into
amplifying.
yourself.
Yes, you'll amplify. You're going to amplify your presence in the world, but you're not
Right.
amplifying mine. And I think understanding the phenomenon through that lens would give us greater and perhaps more correct context to what is happening now, to which people in a scientific community, atheists, doesn't matter at this point. What they're doing is they're going out and building altars, groves, high places, and they're getting technology, not realizing, again, yeah, the incarnations model, the incantation's ancient. This occurred at antiquity. And so there's also kind of a measure, I should say, of being gaslit. A lot of people are gaslighting us, right? Like what they want is they want all the trappings of religiosity. They want all of the altars. They want everything. What their own sigils, in fact, but they don't want us to question the origin. So it's like the other day I heard somebody question, okay, and you hear a lot of this stuff. Well, why is it that demons are flying in spaceships? It's like, okay, but why are aliens wanting altars built?
Right.
And a lot of this goes over their head because they're just, they're parroting what they've heard on, oh my God, I was on X, I was on Twitter, I saw this cool video. They're not actually doing the work. And those of us who are in the field, boots on the ground, I mean, me, Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mayer, others, what we're realizing is that this phenomenon is authoring its own mythology right before our eyes. It wants the altars, it wants the worship, it wants the blood magic, it wants the scrying. But now it wants to be addressed as we're extraterrestrial. Convenient, very convenient. It's just, I don't want to keep rambling, but I already did a show, so I'm
No,
already on my game.
the questions in my head are piling up. I want to intervene
Yep.
real quick. Um, well, obviously there's a tie between demonology, ufology, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. They're interrelated. But let's get into what is the common motive. Okay, yeah, you said altars, they want worship,
Yeah.
but then it also seems like they want to step into our dimension and onto this side of the veil. But it already seems like they can do that with their craft, right? Their bell shaped craft. They're already transversing different dimensions in time. Is it mainly that they want to be embodied, right? To attach to a host like a parasite,
Yeah, the parasitic model is very appealing to me, very appealing to
right?
me. But I think that one thing must be noted, that it's not an accident, it's not novel, I should say, that in the 90s, these craft were manifesting over conjurations. right? They
Right.
incarnated by virtue of I'm interfacing through esotericism, then boom, here they are. You know, the Elizabethan sorcerer and magician, John D. Edward Kelly, they were both scrying, and they also witnessed small UFOs flying with entities staring at them outside of them, almost like a shape of an orb, just but it was metallic
I was gonna say
flying.
orb. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we see the same phenomenon manifesting in the skull experiment, where right through Ouija boards, mind you. Now, guess what happens? The incarnation of the UFO or the UAP. So, and I've said this before, on the verge of being verbose. It's not a bug; it's a feature. And so it's quite possible, again, this is why the call into elite research has been maligned, is because people have virtually a non-existent understanding of their work. If it's non-existent, it's basically been redefined by people who are loosely translating their conclusions or just throwing anything on the wall that sticks. But their conclusion was yes, that Jack Parsons did create a portal. And here's what's so if that was a one-off, I'd be like, okay, you have a point, right? We have no other pattern confirming evidence that conjurings can actually produce UAP. And yet that's not the truth. It's the exact opposite. We do have pattern confirming evidence because it seems like every time we turn around, if it's a like a conglomeration of researchers together, it's a gathering, it's an they're always present.
Right.
There's a reason
Are they
for that.
influence?
Are they the influence? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm saying
I
yeah,
think
they're trying to
so.
influence.
Yes, yes, yes. And some of these experiments have went awry. It just, created not just portals, but just drastically changed the trajectories of the lives present, and not for good reasons either, and in good ways. But my point is that yes, any significant conjuration, be it one person or many, the proto intelligence itself shows up beyond all of the archetypes, right? Beyond the guide, beyond the extraterrestrial. There is something in the ether that manifests, and when it does, the practitioner, the psychic, right, the channeler, it transcends their worldview and all of their world experience to the degree that they are realizing. I thought, right, once again, it's my idea, but it wasn't. And
Mhm.
so again, what we're realizing is, yeah, they want all the trappings. Give me everything, but we don't want it tethered to the occult. And people will say, oh, you use that as they'll try to go to the Webster's dictionary. The occult just means hidden. Sure. So does the word tool, right? Tool has its own definition, depending on how you use it, right? But my point is, what I'm suggesting here is that in each and every case, the archetype is transcended. It seems like the archetype is quite literally bait. It's sure, I'm going to interface with you, hope that you believe I follow rules, and then in the emblems that you're putting in front of the mirror, yeah, you think there's something, but they don't even belong to your species. They belong to mine. They belong to
Right, right.
me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say because I studied astrology, numerology, like a lot of the people in that
Mhm,
get fresh in the New Age. That's kind of the first levels of initiation. It's like tarot, astrology, numerology, these things, right?
mhm, mhm.
And who are the beings that are said to have given us, right? The fallen angels, the titans, whatever you want to call them, Nephilim,
Yeah.
right? Which are another aspect of these archetypes. But you're saying it's this proto intelligence, this demiurgic figure that initiated all of these things. But it's like for what purpose? What we are in a hall
So,
of mirrors, essentially. I think, right?
oh
And it's
yeah,
using these
yeah,
mirrors to reflect itself. But
true. And to your point, we don't even know if we're real,
exactly, exactly,
much less the image in the mirror.
right,
And so this idea of, again, we're conjure to conjure, we've seen evidence of that not just in the occult, but within the interactions between UAP and our pilots, right? Where there's a program within the craft system where the radar, like its trajectory is already decided. The only person that knows that, right, is the people on the ground at the airbase, right? And they're thinking, okay, listen, this is where you're going to meet up again. We'll be, all that. And by the time they get there, they get radioed back. They're already there. So why? Again, because the illusion of control begins and ends with the idea that all my thoughts are mine.
Right.
And right, okay, I'm going to go to this, and we see that in Jerry Marzinski's work too, with respect to mental patients or even addicts, where they said that the voices in their head will tell them where to go. And by the time they get there, right, they're 30 minutes out in the darkness. They turn 2 lefts and 4 rights, and they have no idea where they're at or how they get back home. They just know that an intelligence directed their behavior. And so, again, we're thinking, okay, they could hack technology. They wouldn't need to. They could literally force the hand in, right? And here's the obvious question, or at least point, is that the illusion of free will is at hand.
Right. That's a big one.
That's in play.
Yeah.
It's my idea. Well, as long as it's your idea to bring the emblem in front of the mirror, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to think it's inspiration. You're going to think, man, if this works, my name's going to explode throughout the field. And so it boggles my mind because it was an existential crisis for me. It put me in the mindset of just, do I want to stay in the field? Because I'm realizing some things, and I'm starting to notice that despite the pattern confirming evidence, despite George Hunt Williamson talking to these entities by virtue of homemade Ouija boards, despite George Adamski and just Albert Bender building an altar in his attic to them. They say, oh, completely different intelligence. And,
Right. Exactly.
and dare I say, it's not just them. I think the phenomenon is covering its origin.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, it's moderating and managing our perception of it. It's I liken it to the show Split, the movie Split, right? It wasn't me, that was Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that to you. I didn't want that. And then yet you see where it's going. It's like, oh, okay, fine, sure. A physicist building an altar. We're supposed to ignore that. And it does, I try not to react emotionally, but it does trigger me because, like, you and I know too much about this to be gaslit. We know a lot about this. It's like, okay, well, sure, yeah. You're going to tell me that's the case, but who's telling you that's the case? Because at the end of the day, it's wanting the same thing. And I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know that I probably am, but at this point, I'm looking at its evolution. Now I'm questioning what's going to be taking place in 10 years. Where are these altars going to lead? Are they going to lead to sacrifices?
So that's a good point. Yeah. Um, I think the ultimate sacrifice is right humans, and
Yeah.
I was actually watching something, and it's apparent with the whole Oppenheimer scenario where they asked him, "Hey, are these? I think it was are these the strongest weapons?" And he's like, "Yes, in modern times." Right, alluding to the
Mm,
fact that this has happened before, and the Vedas talk about this
yeah.
of pillars of fire, right, erupting,
Hmm.
and essentially humans dying. But the idea is that the same technology was present before.
Hmm.
So was it okay? I'm going to use you guys to get you guys to believe that you're separate and give you this technology, which ultimately leads to you guys fighting and killing each other, so that we can just get the sacrifice from it.
Hmm.
Or do you think there was a different motive um, there? Because they've always given us this technology. This has happened plenty of times before. So the history's going to repeat itself if we let it get as far as again. And are we going to need the sun to intervene again to wipe us all out or something, or wipe out all AI?
So I think, again, dealing with the parasitic model, because you asked a profound question earlier in my ADHD, obviously, right? The picture of
Same, yeah.
something else. I'm like, oh, it's a squirrel. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so the parasitic model is appealing to me because I've never for once thought that if they were such a threat to us, they'd land on the White House lawn or they would wipe us out.
Exactly.
Um, that only works, right, for neophytes, if I can edit that out, but people, the uninitiated,
Right.
yeah, the pedestrian researcher. But for those of us who've been doing it for a while, it's like, okay, yeah, but the parasitic model is a lot more appealing because it appears that by virtue of possession, the hybridization program, the self-replication of species by virtue of impregnation and implantation, that we are the host, they are the parasite. And the way that works is to facilitate and further their existence, they have to facilitate and further ours. Doesn't mean they love us. It means they need us. It means that they, yes, of course, and take that and put it aside. But I also think that we are sourcing secretions from them. Um, Montague Summers was one of the early demonologists, more of a vampirologist, if you will, but
Hmm.
he was agreeing with others in the field, like Bernard of Gordon, who were noticing a correlation between where the phenomenon was witnessed and the secretions that were being employed in grimoires, where the grimoire will need a specific secretion or excretion. It will need feces or seed, if you will, and then the phenomenon will harvest them.
Like a fruit, yeah.
Yes, and so this is again one of the more darker correlations between necromancy and the creation of a new body for a recently deceased person, right? And so Sinistrari was another one who was saying, hey, listen, some of the secretions we're finding on abductees. I use that word. It's cool because people suggest it's a modern phenomenon. It's not, but he was collecting semen samples on these victims and they were discolored. And so then he would kind of like correlate, okay, like where's the phenomenon being witnessed at right now? Oh, it's over recently deceased men. So yeah, so that's why again that the esoteric value is through and through. And to my knowledge, at least at this point in my research, that it's what it is. That is a common thematic element over and over and over again. And we can argue, not you and I, but people in the field, they can do series, movies, and they can sit there and do, lectures. Say, okay, well, we don't think they're demons. We think they're aliens. I think they're neither, right? Actually,
Doesn't
um,
matter. Yeah.
right. But the interconnectivities, the intersectionality of the occult and the tech, it exists. And now we're at the point of, okay, but what is that there? What is out there that exists?
Right. It's still the magic, right? We're in a magical realm, like in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And I was meaning to watch Alice Through the Looking Glass because I named my video Through the Looking Glass, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, so they changed the movie title is actually Alice Through the Looking Glass, implying that
Right.
we've entered through this looking glass to get into this dimension, whereas before it was like more like a black hole or like a wormhole, but it's the
Mhm.
same thing, right? It's the portal.
Very much so. Very much so. And yeah, so they'll use portals like that. And of course, they'll use mortal portals, which we have in the past called demoniacs, to where, like a parasite, they would step into the skin of a person. So they could do a lot, but and you made a point earlier, I really enjoyed, I liked it because, yes, it does appear that we have a power, in a sense, a species unique ability that they intentionally hide from us. And I think that to a large degree, our government is trying to understand that as well. If you look at some of the experiments they've been doing at the Livermore laboratories and just in Boeing, it's different, even right down the street from me at Wright Pat Air Force Base, placing a man in a room, shutting all of their senses off, right? You're going to put, first of all, it's silent, right? It's built for silence. You can't hear anything. You can't hear a pin drop. You can't hear the only thing you hear is your own thoughts, right? And then it's black where you can't see and you're not touching anything. You're weightless in water. And so what are you doing? What they're trying to do is trigger the ghost. The nature within us, in hoping that they can weaponize consciousness. And it's laughable to me. I mean, I'm not saying they can't. I mean, certainly they have in a way. But when people sit there and frown on the Collins elite, I've heard it from Lou Elizondo and a bunch of others, and they try to frame it in a way that to me is being disingenuous. The Collins elite, they thought that remote viewing was of the devil. No, they didn't. They had actually discovered or uncovered a group of researchers in our government that was trying to remote view aliens.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when they say, "Oh, they're against remote viewing," no. And of course, this is another thing that'll go right over people's heads because they don't know enough to say, "Oh, you know what? It doesn't doesn't pass smell test." And for those of us who do know, yeah, okay, they were trying to remote view aliens, and it was in one of their sessions. Here's one for you. This will freak you out. Then one of them looked around and said, "There's something in me." And that's when the remote viewers, who were literally trying to invade reality and say, "Oh, I'm here." No, the remote viewers were being remote viewed.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm telling you, my friend, it's almost like, where are you? Come find me so that I know where you are. I'm going to give you the illusion you're looking into me. And then by the time I realize it, I got you. And so that's exactly what happened. And so when people, especially on Twitter, I had to get off Twitter. Actually, I'm still on it, but I can't access it anymore. I went there, I tried to recover it. And there was an email in there because they don't even show you the whole email. They show you the first 3 or 4, not my email, not my number. So I can't even recover at this point. So I'm like, whatever, leave it alone. So people are like, "Hey, Nathaniel," I'm not even on. Yeah, but people, they'll throw stuff on the wall and hope it sticks, and that's one of them. They're against remote viewing. No. What happened? Yes, was that these people were remote viewing aliens and literally got their worlds rocked. Because you want to talk about the hitchhiker effect, whatever they are on the other side of the mirror thought, "Gotcha." Yeah.
Where did they mention a location that they were looking at specifically, or no?
No, not at all.
No,
They just
peering
tried
into
to look into aliens.
Okay.
And think about that, right? Okay, sure. And so, yeah, next thing you know, a lot of them are losing their minds. I mean, let's try to theorize what could even do that. I mean, we don't even have correct vocabulary at this point. You're talking about a species who is so sensitive. Ding, gotcha. Oh, there they are. And it's not even the hitchhiker effect. It's hitchhiker effect 10x. And so, yeah, now they feel a presence staring into their room, into them as men. and then the audacity again of these people that, "Oh, well, they're against remote viewers." They're not. What they uncovered a faction within our government that were doing their best to hide their rituals. And when the mask was pulled off, they went ballistic and said, "Well, you know what? We want to do what we want to do, no matter the consequences." But to the point of who they are, oh my Lord. Imagine
That's the question.
what could do that?
Yeah, I mean, these rituals, it's a funny idea to think that we could try to control them with the rituals that they gave us, right? The
There we go. Very good point. Very good point. Yeah.
contenting them the way they here's a cell phone. I gave this to you. Now let me try and hack your privacy with with Gillis, yeah.
I'm gonna lock your door with my key.
Oh, yeah, or that great
No,
example,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
They gave you the key, brother.
yeah, exactly,
It's
exactly.
just, but honestly, man, sometimes common sense eludes them. They are common sense adjacent, if you will. And you think, right? Oh, okay, you're so intelligent. You're very, I'm not suggesting they're stupid. What I'm saying is, again, that when people try to diminish the presence of these older case studies, it's on the part of the phenomenon. And I realized that when, I started thinking, okay, why is it that we're compartmentalizing this intelligence? If the phenomenon can create physiological constructs, then is it possible that our entire mythology of apparitional theory is wrong?
Hmm.
If
Right.
it can create something, right? I mean, look at that. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that it's potentially created a character out of the apparition, may not even exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
It's an
intelligence.
after image when it's just created by lasers or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever it is, right? The possibility exists that it's not the internet. That's not a ghost. It's the phenomenon incarnating through an archetype. And so this is the potential that exists that this true, but it's possible that the apparitions themselves are not at all what we think they are. We were led astray. We believe they are evidences of the afterlife. If the phenomenon can create physiological constructs, we need to back up, re-examine our analysis, not just in hauntology, but in ufology. If it can create something that looks four-dimensional, three-dimensional, it looks like it's real, something that you can interact with, interface with, right? And it literally is an extension of the proto-intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And when the phenomenon's finished, it can take that image,
Mm-hmm.
then it's possibly authoring its own mythology. And if that's the case, which I think it is, if that's the case, I think that is why it's been so evasive and has had such an amazing ability, remarkable ability to diversify its intelligence in our eyes. Archetype, and they're all separate, but their pathologies are the same. And that's what we're seeing right now in ufology, the newest model, the newest archetype.
I mean, if we're like at the lowest level of, let's say the dimensions, the simulations, wherever these images are being projected from, kind of like you stick I don't know, an image on the glass and it
Mm-hmm.
transcribes through the three-dimensionally, right? If you're existing in higher dimensions, you can easily affect the ones below you because you're aware of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That only really leads me to believe that this is some sort of closed experiment, right? Sort of
I've been,
loop.
yeah, I've been given that word by mentors of mine, parapsychologists who, um, to the point that one of them is Steve Merritt, Barry Fitzgerald. They're my favorite researchers. Paul Sinclair as well, my favorite researchers at the time. Right now, I mean, they're incredible. But yeah, to the point that the foreknowledge is present, right? Like Steve Merritt had a case study in Seattle, Demon House with Keith Linder, and he was working with a guy named Don Phillips, and Don Phillips had a guide archetype who was feeding him information, and it was falsifying its identity. This is who I am. This is where I died, and this is where I lived. And then they went to City Hall. They reverse engineered it. She never existed.
Hmm.
But what she's saying is accurate, right? At least in terms of prophecy and foreknowledge. And so during one of their sessions that Becky, which you guys can watch it, it's on season 5 of, I think it's season 5 of Unsolved Mysteries,
Okay.
where Becky comes out and tells Steve and Barry, you guys are, Steve, at least you're going to Seattle. No intention of going to Seattle. Never heard of it. Didn't even hear the case at that point. Next thing you know, boom, he's in Seattle.
Mhm.
So whatever they are, I mean, they're obviously interacting with us, but my focus is now on the concept of who's conjuring who. And there is some form of instinctual, if not innate fear within me, to where it's like knowing what we know, the pattern confirming evidence, the data set, it's replete with case studies that suggest, if not outright prove irrefutably, we're not in control. We're in less control even of the experiments. And that now it's creating a new species of practitioner, right? Where they want all the religious artifacts. In fact, they'll even use the same incantations, but now it's extraterrestrial, which would only serve to further their incarnation in our world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Anyways,
it was I think it was you, right, that was mentioning the Collins Institute, Collins lead of hiding, disclosure because it's so closely tied to Revelation, right?
it
The biblical
is.
revelation.
Yeah. And so this, again, this is another, you're right. I'm going to take it in another direction for a second.
Oh, yeah, please.
The, what I've been hearing coming out about the Collins elite is that they're religious fundamentalists.
Right.
And, Lou Elizondo called them zealots. And it's like, all right, fine, whatever. And my background is in evangelicalism. And even more than that, my father is Hebrew roots. And so, like, I grew up studying linguistics and hearing all of it. So I'm very, very well versed in their theologies. And religious fundamentalism believes in what's called the replacement theology, and that would be that the church has replaced Israel. And not just that, but it goes even deeper, that there's a new covenant. And with the new covenant, the old law, the Mosaic law, is done away with. That's what religious fundamentalism is. And so, what I'm noticing with people that want to poke their heads out of the theological clouds with an opinion, they're, especially with respect to Collins elite, they try to paint them as one thing. And then somehow, because they don't know what they're talking about, right? They don't have the background. They just heard from a person that heard from person. And so they just kind of, well, okay, it makes sense to me. So they say, on one hand, they say, okay, they're all religious fundamentalists. And they're into fundamentalism. They're evangelicals. They're religious far right. And yet, in Nick Redfern's book, no. Number one, they went back to keeping the Mosaic law, which is not religious fundamentalism, or at least fundamentalist. That's not new covenant theology. All right, that's not replacement theology. That's literally trashing at least what they were taught.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
Right? And saying, okay, look, I was taught, no, 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 I'm going back to this. And again, it's like, okay, to that point, not only did they kind of deconstruct what they were taught, like, okay, I'm not no longer, am I just going to keep the Ten Commandments? That I don't think that's enough. I'm going to go back to the original Mosaic law in Exodus. They kind of they went in another strange area too. They kind of bled into the idea that not only was my religion wrong, at least my perception of it, but their religion, exterior, other religions are wrong as well. And so, I got to thinking about this. It's like, okay, if it was only that everyone else's religion was wrong, but my religion is right, they would have said that.
Mhm.
That would call it evangelicalism, right? Or where they evangelize. Evangelism is the word I was looking for. They evangelize. They didn't do that.
Mhm.
No, like literally their conclusions. they stretch them out of their dogmas.
Right.
And it wasn't hell, it wasn't Sheol, it wasn't Dante's Inferno they were teaching. That's what they were taught. But the data suggested that, look, the only hope they had was to go back to Torah.
Oh wow.
And that's not evangelicalism, my friends. And it takes people, at least, like from my background and others, to point that out and say, well, we got a significant problem. 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5. And once again, it's so pronounced, the disinformation, where it's like, okay, was this designed? Are you intentionally coming out here and lying to the populace so that we're thinking extraterrestrial, we're thinking UFOs in the sky, we're not thinking of something more local? But
Yeah. So what makes you think drove them to say the Torah was the needed law system?
so well, okay, so they went to Sybil Leek. She was I don't know, can't quite call her a contemporary to Aleister Crowley. But
Mm-hmm.
she knew Crowley before she moved to Los Angeles, and she said that Crowley would often come to her cottage, and sometimes he performed rituals. They would drink tea. He would talk to her about his research, and so the College Elite visited Sybil Leek when she moved to Los Angeles, and they asked her, "Can you contact the entities that Crowley was contacting?" Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay,
just mute.
did you mute
Yeah,
yourself? Okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
You're
I
good.
went deaf over here. I'm like, uh-oh.
Well, no, I'm not gonna
Um,
speak. I'm just gonna listen.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, and so they're with her. So she does her, her thing, and she's channeling, and next thing you know, an entity begins to talk through her. Now, watch. Of course, they'll channel aliens, right? And they'll push that. But in this particular case, they asked this entity, "Are you an alien? Are you extraterrestrial?" And it laughed at them. Laughed, "You idiots, you morons. Don't you know this is our newest deception? You fell for it."
Yeah.
So there is an orchestrated effort now in the field to, again, disconnect the phenomenon from its origin. Meanwhile, reincorporating all of the trappings it's carried out through the years. And I'm like, I'm not going to be gaslit. But at the same time, it's humorous to me. It's like, okay, guy, whatever.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, no, I mean, do you think maybe they're also trying to also push that? It's not something that they publicly disclose, right? The Hebraic origins, the Judaic origins.
So somewhere in antiquity, our ancestors
It seems like yeah, they
were,
were the ones because Judaism is right from Kabbalah and has Egyptian origins, right? So it seems like they were the ones closest to be able to manifest these entities, be able to communicate with them. They're God's chosen people and all that. But
yeah, and to vet them, that's important too. And, like, again, I saw somebody on Twitter, somebody commented, like, oh, practitioners, we've been the only ones that have been vetting negative and positive entities throughout
oh, right,
history. And it's
right,
like, okay,
right. Yeah, yeah.
sure. It's only you guys, right? There's no text in the Bible that says, hey, test the spirits, right? Like, yeah, that didn't exist. Okay. But yeah, so somewhere in history, and this could be the Atimu, the Mesopotamian legend, but there were at least people that were interfacing with the phenomenon in the altars and the ritual bowls and praying and ritual sacrifice, all that, to where some of them acted for the benefit of humanity, others did not. And so, but where do we draw the line, right? Because we've seen cases where the phenomenon will walk up and dap you up like they, went to high school with you, and we're best buds. Right? I mean, even Ted Rice's case, I'm your grandfather. Like, how much more manipulative can you possibly get? And I love you. How have you been, buddy? And next thing you know, it was not in our best interest. It was a means to an end, where the phenomenon was seeking more and more control. And I'm looking right now, I'm looking at the Sanhedrin in Israel. I'm very, very interested in that, because if they're going to build the altars, and I'm just throwing this out there, I don't know if they're going to go this far, but if they're teaching that once the Messiah comes back, they're going to restore sacrifices. Why? So I don't know where all this ends up. I mean, I don't know where all this ends up. I just know that through my research that we're being gaslit. There's something, and I think it's orchestrated by the phenomenon, the proto-intelligence, that is trying to incarnate as a new archetype, not just an interface, but something that is accompanied by miraculous manifestation. And even right now, there are some that are using not just incantations, not just sorcery, but necromancy,
Yeah.
to contact non-human intelligences. Right. That would be like me calling T-Mobile to get a hold of Verizon, and then me being surprised when T-Mobile shows up, right? Thinking, oh my goodness, no, right? Yeah, they're all separate intelligences with the same plans and the same coverage, sure. So it's just, I think that as it's evolving, what would, I guess, be the secondary response of the ultra building? I mean, where do we go from there? Is it okay? My aliens are better because they have a higher altar, or my altar is different than your species of alien, or because again, sure they
Yeah, it's
want
the
it to
same
be
thing.
right,
Tale as old as time with my God better than your gods. Yeah.
brother. Yeah, I'm the Most High.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, my altar, I'm on a mountain. You've got that piddly little altar of stone out
I got the
there.
moon.
Sure. Absolutely. And so what we're our trajectory at least is entering into the argument of gods, where they are making their own prophets, they are incarnating, they are giving miracles. And one of the leading experiencers now, who has been investigated by the Pentagon and the Vatican, according to his own son, that one of the lead scientists who is in contact with the others called him up one day and said, okay, we're going to move to the next phase. Next phase is what? Now you have permission to go into churches and lay hands on people and heal them. Okay,
Wow.
where are we going? Where are we going? And why is it, again, that what they want to do is, they want to have the same posturing, they want to have the same rituals, the same religious artifacts, but they want to be allowed to redefine history and redefine the meaning of them. They can't, they do. I mean, again, the laying on of the hands was an exorcistic rite. It was either to cast out a spirit or to implant one in.
Oh. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a very important aspect of the deception because
Right.
they give you one thing and they gain a lot more, right?
Oh,
Especially with
yeah. Yes, yes.
the conjuring encounters 5 circles.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Of course, it's all different. It's like, okay, why is it different? Oh, because I said it is. This is not a black thermal Henley. This is not facial hair. This is not a Zoom call. You're out of your mind. It's like, okay, sure, sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, like, there's a conference in October here, not here, but here in October, in Germany, where they have an experiencer who's going to vacate their own body to make way and become a vessel for the other. But that's not possession. No, no, no. Right. I mean, check this out. So even the 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 tradition in exorcistic rites where the spirit would leave the fingers and enter in through the fingers because it was the longest extension of the exorcist's hand. Even the Itimu, the magicians and midwives in Mesopotamian legend, they were set by the household, by the husband, to sit over the pregnant wife because they were trying to either exorcise entities out. And this is fascinating. The same midwives turned on the pregnant women, and now they were casting spirits into the body through the same method.
Wow. Yeah.
So when I hear an intelligence come out and say, oh, by the way, the scientist who built an altar is the same scientist telling this experiencer, hey, they told me to tell you something. What? I got a revelation from an altar. What's the revelation? Go in churches, lay hands on people. What we're looking at is a
Another altar.
pathogen. Yes, it's a pathogen that is creeping its way into the field, and it's stretching its presence into everything it possibly can.
Yeah, AI,
And
AI, 100%.
absolutely, yeah, and it's redefining. It's yeah, that's
Right,
not
right.
me. It is.
I think, like I said, the most important aspect is the origin point because it's probably like a Wizard of Oz phenomenon where if you pull back the curtain and you discover it, then
Yeah.
everything just stops. The whole amusement ride.
Oh, yeah. I've had conversations with other researchers about that, and we don't know. I could say this, that when others have gotten too close to the truth, they've suffered consequences. You know, Dr. Carla Turner, yeah, she got cancer and died. Paulino, who I was on his show years ago, Paulino, a great researcher. If you guys want to look him up, I think it was not the infield poltergeist. That was Boris Grossman, I think, but Rick, no, Bridgeport poltergeist, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Anyways, so yeah, he wrote like, okay, what happened? He out of nowhere, he just stopped eating, couldn't eat, couldn't talk, couldn't drink water, couldn't hold. It was crazy. I got a phone call, I think, or a text from Shane Searway one day, and Shane's like, he was his co-host. He's a good friend of mine. She's like, look, man, we got a problem. I'm like, what happened? We have no idea. We have clues and theories. But before Paulino died, he put a Facebook post out and said, look, I'm very worried about researchers. It seems like the phenomenon is targeting them. And when people want to suggest in the infancy of their intellect that this is all love and light, what kind of a love and light narrative or entity would literally go out of its way to execute people who want to make eye contact with it?
100%. Yeah, it seems like we really can't handle the truth, like they say.
No. Yeah, the Truman Show. I think we may have talked about that the last show I was on with you, right? The Truman Show, where the actors are all set, all the archetypes are present. You have the facade, and you have the human interaction, the symbiotic nature of the relationship, right? Truman has to turn right, and then why? Because the traffic is forcing him to. Right. And then at the moment he goes into the grocery store, he goes behind all of the archetypes. And that's where the producers are. That's the proto intelligence. And what do the proto intelligence do? Again, perception management. Stop them.
Yeah.
Remember that? Stop them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, will we ever know? I don't know. I think sometimes, at least, that if I get too close, I'm afraid. I mean, that's why I'm not in a relationship. I'm not married. I don't have a girlfriend. I have no children because I think that at the very most, right, he could come after me.
Them. Mm-hmm. Oh, right,
But
right. Yeah. Yeah. You're the only one in their visor. No, I feel for you.
at
Yeah, and
least I have college
what you said
football.
earlier with the whole fame aspect. Yeah, I didn't pursue. Oh yeah. I didn't pursue like the whole astrology and numerology and new age spiritual teachings, because obviously that's a lie. But they use you. They into a prophet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you
I think we
yeah, you
lost connection.
froze for a second. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
You
you.
froze so much. Okay, I can hear you. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
But yeah,
Anyways,
these aren't even
yeah,
our sigils.
that's
They're not our
that's the
symbols.
gist of what I wanted to get at. Obviously, there's a lot more. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you're still
that's not our
frozen.
stuff. They gave it to us, and there you go. You're back.
There you go. Yeah, it's not us. It's not ours. Um, and sometimes my mind goes back to the shortest horror story ever made, ever written. Last man on earth was alone in his house, and there came a knock on the door. Right. I have control over them. That is hilarious to me. And that's really where I'm at. I mean, I don't really have any profound conclusions. If anything, I have questions. And perhaps that's the whole purpose of all this, right? I think maybe we've been asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
Perhaps they've controlled the question, and in controlling our questions are the extraterrestrial. They've controlled the answer.
But yeah, we've been way too distracted with going down dead ends, 100%. But hey, thank you so
Unfortunately,
much for hopping on again with me today.
not a
Hope to
problem,
have you
brother.
back. Obviously, we're gonna have more questions that need to be answered. You're gonna do more research. We're gonna try our best to continue doing this research without getting
For
too
sure,
scared
brother.
by these beings. I think we're in the long line of work, but uh, you know, truth is what's really important, right? And
It's yeah, it's
yeah,
necessary.
we'll do our
Thank you,
best.
brother. Thank you for having me on, man. You have a good weekend. All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Hey, where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you or
All
just
right.
watch your
Well,
stuff?
that's I'm on Instagram. Um,
Okay.
that's the only like social media site that I'm on more than anything. It's pretty much the only one I'm on. Other than that, you can go to my YouTube channel, look at my guest appearance playlist, and you'll see all of my
Nice.
interviews, at least the ones I compiled on YouTube. But other than that, brother, that's it.
Okay. Perfect. All right then. Check them out, guys. Does some great research. You gotta just look deeper into the past, the love and light, because truth is found in the darkness. It seems. All right. Thank you so
Unfortunately.
much. Take care, Mr.
All right,
Gillis.
brother.
Take
Have a
care,
good
everyone.
one.